Now let's continue our discussion about how we can allocate the factory overhead to the product cost. And the third method that we're going to learn, which is the main focus of this chapter, is the activity-based costing method, well known as the ABC method. So the activity-based costing method provides an alternative approach for allocating factory overhead that uses multiple factory overhead rates based on different activities. So instead of allocating it to departments, we're going to make our base based on activities. So activities are the types of work or actions involved in a manufacturing or service process. Factory overhead costs are initially budgeted for activities, sometimes called activity cost pools, such as machine usage, inspections, moving, production setups, and it could be also engineering activities. The next figure would illustrate to us or give us how activity-based costing differ from the multiple production department method. So as you can see here, in the multiple production department factory overhead rate method, we had two or more departments where we are going to allocate the overhead among these departments, and then based on the allocation we're also going to calculate production department rates for each department, and then this is how we allocate the factory overhead into products. In activity-based costing, this is different. We're going to allocate the factory overhead into different activities, and then we calculate activity rates, and based on the activity rates usage, we're going to, or the activity usage multiplied by the rates, we are going to calculate the factory overhead into the products. So fabrication and assembly are now identified as activities rather than departments. So remember, in the second method, we use fabrication and assembly as two different departments. Now we have to think about them as activities, and we're going to add actually more activities to them. So the setup, quality control inspections, and engineering change functions that were previously allocated to the fabrication and assembly departments are now classified as separate activities. So as you can see here, we still have our 1.6 million total budgeted activity cost, or in other words, that's the overhead cost. So we're going to allocate it into these 5 activities. We have fabrication, assembly, setup, quality control inspections, and engineering changes. And you can see here we allocated these values, and the total is 1.6 million. So let's continue using our company, which is Ruiz company. We have the first thing we want to do is to see how the activity rates are computed. So simply the same concept. We have the budgeted activity cost from each activity, and then we divide that by the total activity base usage that we estimate for all of the different products. So the term activity base rather than allocation base is used because the base is related to an activity. So activity base usage for the two products are as follows. Remember, in our example for the Ruiz company, we have snowmobiles and the riding mower. So you see here the estimated units of total productions is 1,000 units for the snowmobiles and 1,000 for the riding mowers. The estimated setups are 100 setups for snowmobiles, 20 for the mowers, and the quality control inspections are 100 inspections for the snowmobiles and 4 inspections for the mowers. And then the estimated engineering change orders, we have 12 change orders for the snowmobiles and 4 change orders for the riding mowers. So in the top table here, we're going to see the activity-based usage for the two products that we have. We have the snowmobile, and then we have the riding mowers, and then we get the total activity-based usage. So for fabrication, we have 7,000 direct labor hour, and for the riding mowers, it's 1,000 direct labor hour, and these are the numbers that we had before. Now we have the assembly. We have 3,000 direct labor hours and 9,000 direct labor hours for the mowers. And then we have these numbers for the setup, the numbers for the quality control inspections as we presented, and the engineering changes. So you see the total. These are very important because this is how we're going to get the fractions for each for each product. So one more time, we have 5 activities. Remember, now we are doing the ABC. We have fabrication, assembly, setup, quality control, inspections, and engineering challenges. The 1.6 million were allocated among these 5 activities as follows, and we had these numbers were previously allocated. And these are the total activity base usage. Notice maybe for the fabrication and assembly we're using the direct labor hours, but for setup and for the inspections and for the changes, these are not direct labor hours anymore. So we have things like setups, inspections, engineering changes, and these are the total numbers that I was telling you about, these numbers here. So that's why I was saying these are important numbers. So we divide the budgeted activity cost by the total activity base usage. We get the activity rate for each activity. So that's the activity rate for each activity we have. So for fabrication, it's $45 per direct labor hour. For assembly, it's $20 per direct labor hour. For setup, it's $4,000 per setup. For the quality control inspection, $3,000 per inspection. And for engineering changes, it's $13,000 per engineering change order. Now let's see the direct labor hours or the number of direct labor hours used by each product would be 10 hours or 10,000 hours and would be computed as follows. Remember, we had the snowmobiles, they had fabrication. For these 2 departments, we had the fabrication and assembly, and for the riding mower, we had again fabrication and assembly, and these are the hours that we had previously allocated. So the total direct labor hours for the snowmobile for fabrication is 7,000 hours. For assembly department, 3,000, and the total here is 10,000 hours. So I think the numbers here are not new. We've seen them in the previous examples. So now let's see the allocation of the cost or cost allocation. So overhead costs of each activity are allocated to product by multiplying the product's activity-based usage by the activity rate. So we get the activity-based usage by the activity rate that we already calculated in the previous slides here. So these are the rates. We're going to see the usage per product. So the estimated total factory overhead cost for a product is the sum of the product's individual activity allocations. So the factory overhead cost per unit is computed by dividing the product's total factory overhead cost by the total units of estimated production. So you can see here, to calculate the factory overhead cost per unit, we get the total factory overhead cost and we divide it by the total units of estimated production. And in the next slide, we're going to see these computations. So I like this because it's a good, we can replicate this on an Excel sheet and we can play with the numbers. Here we have our 5 activities. We have the fabrication, we have the assembly, setup, quality control, inspection, and engineering changes. And that's the total factory overhead cost. Here we have on these 3 columns are for snowmobile, the right columns are for the riding mowers. And then we got these activity-based usage, here are the rates, and here we have the activity-based usage, and here we have the rates. Multiply each one by the number to get the activity cost per activity, and then we get the total here to be the total factory overhead cost, which is 1,231,000. Remember, we had 1,000 estimated units of production, so the factory overhead cost per unit of production for snowmobiles is $1,231. We do the same thing for the riding mower. We multiply each one of the 5 activities by its rate. We get the total here, calculate the total or add up the total divided by the number of estimated units of productions. We're still 1,000, and that will give us $369 cost per unit, or factory overhead cost per unit. So notice the numbers are different from what we had in the 2 previous methods. So here are the 5 activities again that we decided to use. These are the total allocation, these are the rates, and we were able to calculate the factory overhead cost per unit for the snowmobiles to be $1,231 per unit, and for the mowers it's 369. So now let's compare the three methods. So see here the single plant-wide rate method. It gave us like 800 for each product. For snowmobiles and riding, the riding mowers were the same. When we started using more accurate method, like something like the multiple production department rates, the snowmobile allocation is different. You can see here it's almost double the value for the riding mower. But when we used activity-based costing method, where the allocation was based on the activities used in each product, in this case we see that the allocation is even more precise, and the amount of the snowmobile allocation of the cost of the factory overhead is almost 3 times or 4 times what we have for the riding mowers. And that's why many businesses, they rely on activity-based costing to get more accurate more accurate allocation of the overhead. The only problem with activity-based costing, again, it's a little bit more expensive because you have to do all these calculations. So let's check our knowledge and test our knowledge and see if we remember this. So which of the following would not be considered a manufacturing activity cost pool in activity-based costing? Could it be the number of inspections? I think we use that. Hours of machine usage? Again, we also use that. Number of machine setups? I think we use that as well. So let's see the other one. Number of employees in the department. Now we never use that, and I don't think that can be a good activity-based, or I don't think it's a good activity cost pool, because we want it to be an activity, and employees in the department is not considered to be an activity. It's just a pure number. So the right answer, or the wrong answer in this case, is the number of employees in the department. So factory overhead costs are initially budgeted for activities, sometimes called activity cost pools. Examples in manufacturing could be machine usage, inspections, moving, production setups, and it could be also engineering activities. Now let's see how we can use activity-based costing for selling and administrative expenses. And many businesses are doing that nowadays. So selling administrative expenses may be allocated to products for managerial decision making, such as analyzing product profitability. One method of allocating selling and administrative expenses to the product is based on the sales volume. However, products may consume activities in ways that are unrelated to their sales volume. When this happens, or when this occurs, activity-based costing may be a more accurate method of allocation. And again, here we have the selling administrative activities, different things like post-sale technical support, order writing, promotional support, order entry, customer return processing, shipping documents preparation, shipping and handling, and field service. And here we have the ipsos and factos. So, for example, like post-sale technical support, it could be product is easy for the customer to use, or it could be product requires specialized training in order for the customer to use it. Again, I'm not going to go for each one of these, but just to get the idea here. And we're going to use, or they have here an example for a company, they call it Abacus. So, Abacus Field Warranty Service activity has a budgeted cost of $150,000. Assume that 100 warranty claims are estimated for the period, then using warranty claims as an activity base, the warranty claim activity rate is $1,500, and that was computed simply by getting the budgeted activity cost by the total activity base usage. So the budgeted warranty claim expenses in our case was the $150,000, which represents our budgeted activity cost, and the total estimated warranty claims were 100 claims. That represents the activity base usage. So that gave us $1,500 per warranty claim. So many service companies use activity-based costing for determining the cost of services. And here we're going to use a hospital to see how we can do this kind of analysis. Assume that Hopewell Hospital uses activity-based costing to allocate hospital overhead to patients. This is very common, by the way. Hopewell, a applies activity-based costing as follows. The first step would be to identify the activities, and the second step, determine activity rates for each activity, and then finally allocating overhead cost to patients based upon activity-based usage. The hospital has identified the following activities. They have admission, radiological testing, operating room, pathological testing, and dye tray and laundry. So here we have admission, radiological testing, operating room, pathological testing, and the last activity is dye tray and laundry. So you can see here that for admission, the calculation was $180 per admission. For radiology, it's $320 per radiological image. For operating room, $200 per operating room hour. For pathological testing, $120 per specimen. Dye tray and laundry, $150 per day. So this is how they're going to calculate this kind of cost per patient. And again, keep in mind, patient usage is not going to be the same. Some patient might require more radiological testing than others. Same thing for their operating rooms, for the pathology, and so on. They might stay longer in the hospital, so they might need more dye tray and laundry. So that's why it's not consistent. I think this is a good way for hospitals and many activities. I think we can apply the same concept here for hotels, for example. So assume the following data for radiological testing. We have the budgeted cost, $960,000. We have the total estimated activity-based usage, 3,000 images. So based on that, if we divide the 960 by the 3,000, we get the $300 per radiological image, which is just computed based on the method that we had before. So this $320 is what we had here under radiological testing. So these activity rates along with the patient activity-based usage are used to allocate cost to patients as follows. We're going to get the patient activity-based usage multiplied by the activity rate to get the activity costs allocated to patient. So here you see we have one admission, that's for one of the patients, Maya Wilson. One admission, 2 images for radiology, 4 hours of operating room, 1 specimen of pathology, and 7 days for dye tray and laundry. So we take these numbers multiplied by the rate and we get the activity cost that would be allocated to that patient. Again, as I mentioned before, every patient would be different. So let's assume that we have different patients. So using this kind of Excel sheet, we show how much revenue we generated from them. But the patient cost, we have the drugs and supplies, admissions, radiological testing, operating room, pathology, dye tray and laundry. We get the total patient cost and then we calculate the operating income. Again, we assume that there should be like profit in most cases, but here we have, for this example, for this patient, the total patient cost based on that allocation was higher than the revenue that was generated. For whatever reason, I don't want to go like in details because again, this is just an example. So activity-based costing can be also used to improve the cost of a product, and that's a good thing that can be applied. And here we have an example for a company that we call it, or they call it Lee Corporation, and we can use the ABC product information to reduce cost. So for example, Lee Corporation assembles LCD monitors. And here are their activities or the activity information that is available for their 40-inch monitors. So they have assembly setup, production control, material control, moving, testing. So as you can see here, they have 6 different activities. These are the activity-based usage, which is how much they use per unit. And this is the rate that was calculated. They have, like, for assembly, it's $14 per hour. For setup, it's $20 per hour, and so on. And then the activity cost is multiplying how much we use it for and what is the rate. And for that kind of monitor, which is the 40-inch monitor, the total cost based on activity based costing is $36. So we multiplied the usage by the rates, and we got $36. So that's how much is allocated per 40-inch monitor. So management is seeking to remove $3 of activity cost from the product in order to remain price competitive. They think that $36 is too high, because when you have this amount of cost, of course that would make force the company to sell the product for a higher price. So they, in order to be able competitive or to stay competitive, they want to find a way to reduce the activity cost. So they are seeking, or they want to reduce it by $3 from the product in order to remain competitive. The activity cost reduction can be accomplished in two basic ways. And again, here are the general ideas. You can improve the operations so that the activity-based usage per unit is either reduced or eliminated. Or you can change the classification of employees doing an activity and thereby therefore decrease the activity rate. Higher classified employees are more expensive but more skilled than lower classified employees. Again, but that might have an impact on quality. So I think you can use one of the two alternatives, or it could be you can use both options. So assume the process was improved so that setup activity required 1/3 less time to complete per unit, and the moving distance was cut in half. So if I go back to these numbers, they say here 1/3 less time for the setup and half for the moving. So see this setup activity, it went down from 30 cents, 0.3 to 0.2. That's the 2/3 of the 30 is 20, or 0.20. And the moving went down from 0.40 to 0.20. If we do simple calculation here in this chart here, you can see that this went to 20 and this went to 20. It used to be 30 and this used to be 40. So now if we multiply the number, we can see that there's a reduction here that took down the 36 to 31.60 cents, which is more than the $3 that they wanted. So the shaded areas show the improvements. Setup was reduced from 0.3 hour to 0.2 hour. The moving distance was cut from 0.4 to 0.2 hour. And these changes reduced the activity cost of each monitor from $36 to $31.60, which is about $4.40, which exceeded the $3 target. So again, I hope this gives you an idea of how activity-based costing can be also helpful in managing the details of the cost of the product that you have. And sometimes it's hard to know which one of those overhead items are the one that are impacting the cost. And by breaking it into activities like that, I think it's very helpful, where you get the usage, you get the rates, and you can be able to see like how much I can play with the numbers in order to be more efficient. So I hope that gives you a quick idea of what is ABC, or activity-based costing, and the different alternatives or simpler alternatives. And just study hard, and please make sure that you keep reading the chapter. Thank you.